have very little confidence that future assemblies, future administrations, future chiefs of police would actually continue that pattern, which I think is really troubling when we are considering writing a new section of criminal code. Furthermore, camping is technically not allowed. Camping is already prohibited everywhere in Anchorage, per our code. There is no place outside of sanctioned campgrounds that you pay to use where people are legally allowed to camp. What this ordinance does is it asks us to identify criminalized areas, special areas, that it turns a completely blind eye to the fact that there is no legal place for folks who are unsheltered. It doesn't exist. So while we may say that we're not criminalizing homelessness, neither are we saying here are the definitive spaces where if you do not own a home, you can legally go. I have a real issue with the suggestion that moving desperate people around our city makes us safer. This conversation has been couched in terms of public safety, but I think there are some assumptions underneath that statement that are false. There is an assumption that our city's crime problem is the result of visible homelessness. That we don't have enough tools to move people along from sensitive areas, and that policing unsheltered people makes our city safer. I struggle to believe that those three propositions are true when we know that the bulk of the drugs that come in and out of Anchorage do so through organized crime networks and not from people who are unhoused. And if you listen carefully to what the chief said, people who are unsheltered are more often than not the victims, not the perpetrators. So continuing to displace people around our city creates more desperation, more loss of property, more trash, and more environmental impact in more places. Because let's be clear, the reason that homeless camps look the way they do is because folks who are unhoused produce garbage just like housed people do, produce human waste just like housed people do. The difference is that folks who are outside don't have a place to put that. But if the accumulated garbage from my house stacked up for a week, it would be quite a pile. I think we're looking at more visible homelessness as a result of this ordinance, more people wandering the streets, more angry neighbors, because now there are more people circulating, and more interaction, right, wrong, or indifferent, compassionate or not, with law enforcement. I want to be really clear that we already have laws on our books that relate to public drug use, theft, assault, drug dealing, prostitution, public indecency. We already have laws about these things. We already have a code that speaks to a variety of abatement options, some of which may be inconvenient, but we have a mechanism for 24-hour abatement in sensitive areas. That exists already. We are not tied to a 10-day abatement. It's helpful because it means that there's no obligation on the part of the municipality to store goods, but I'm okay with a little extra inconvenience if it means that we are actually abiding by our legal obligation to the abatement process. We can proactively post no trespassing signage. If we're really concerned about schools and public parks, we can do that. But in a final analysis, my chief objection to this ordinance is that it is out of sequence. There's no provision for true pre-arrest diversion. There's no contemplation of the actual consequences of more unhoused, more unsheltered people circulating in our community. And we still have not answered the question of where it is permissible for people who do not have a home to live. And I, as a policymaker, am unwilling to criminalize poverty, addiction, and mental health disorders from this dais. And you can say that that's not being attuned to public safety, but I don't those things are mutually exclusive. So my objection to this ordinance is on moral grounds. Something can be legally permissible and it can still be morally incorrect. That is where I stand, and that is why I will be a no vote on this ordinance. And in some future iteration, when we have sufficient supports in our community, when we have pre-arrest diversion online, when we can guarantee that any person who engages with law enforcement will have an option for a safe, appropriate shelter, then come back to me, circle back, and we can have a different conversation, but not like this and not right now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much.